Good morning. Welcome into 5 Clubs here on Golf Channel, also on the PGA Tour Radio Network on Sirius XM. I am Gary Williams. Great to have you with us on this Monday, and this program always presented by Century Insurance. They walk it when it comes to the way that they invest in the game of golf. Of course, their relationship with the United States Golf Association, also with the First Tee, and of course that first event in the calendar year on the PGA Tour. Golf Pride, my grips, the Align Max, the reverse taper, everything in my bag is Golf Pride, always has been. Peter Millar, everything I wear and have worn for the last 15 years because they have refined luxury and style for the last 20 years. And then, of course, Pinehurst, the cradle of American golf. I'm excited to go back there this weekend for a special event. I was there last weekend, and just so you know, their first on-course offerings are now available to book. You can start going there in May to the cottages at Pinehurst number 8. I toured them last weekend. They are fantastic. Speaking of fantastic, there's a guy that was hired several years into my original stint at Golf Channel, who I thought was one of the best hires that the company ever made. And he is now working for basically every entity in golf. Why? Because he's that good, and that is Justin Ray. He's going to be joining me. If you are on social media and you invest in golf, which you obviously do if you're watching this right now, you probably know him. He has a depth of knowledge and an insatiable appetite to learn more every single day, not only about what's going on present day and giving you context, but also historically. He's going to be joining me. We're going to dive deep into not only the Florida swing, specifically some wrinkles, some angles, some data as it relates to the Cognizant Classic at PGA National, but also he's going to give everybody some context as it relates to what Scottie Scheffler has done performance-wise over the last 3 years. And then Thomas Detry, who I believe is the man with the best Wikipedia photo that we have on planet Earth currently. He also just won a couple of weeks ago, and he, to me, is a great example of something I talked about at length a couple of weeks ago, and that is that in this game and in this sport at the elite level, and really for all of us, whatever our level, we have belief one moment and then we have doubt in the next. He talked about that in the immediate aftermath of winning the WM Phoenix Open. I'm excited to have him on for an extended conversation. Plus, we wrap up every week with dogs. Yes, we will do that at the end of the program. But let me begin with something that's kind of an offshoot of what we talked about yesterday, and that is the developmental levels. And yesterday was more about junior golf, but this week the PGA Tour has a gift. They have the gift in the form of a young man who plays golf at Florida State University, and that's Luke Clanton. And it's a gift that the WM Phoenix Open didn't need because that place was going to be unhinged on a Friday afternoon no matter what. Those players could be going through truly in a catatonic state, and it wouldn't have mattered because everyone would have been having a party. But the Cognizant Classic has a young man who's 1 point away from gaining employment on the PGA Tour, and that is through PGA Tour U. And if you look at this apparatus for college players to gain entry to the professional ranks, primarily through whether it is PGA Tour Canada, the PGA Tour Americas, as it's been rebranded, or the Korn Ferry Tour, or in the case of players like Ludvig Åberg or Michael Torbjornsson, who have gotten full exempt status on the PGA Tour by graduating with the most points in their respective classes, they made their way immediately to the PGA Tour. And I know there were a lot of members of the PGA Tour said, really? I got to slug it out here for years on the Korn Ferry Tour, and you're greenlining college kids? I get their sentiment, but this is a business that is in the business of building future stars. Talent doesn't get hid. Eventually it's going to be discovered. And in this sport, you can't hide your performance. Your performance is either going to make you ascend or descend, depending on what score you're putting in the boxes every single week. And in the case of PGA Tour U and now PGA Tour U Accelerated, someone like Luke Clanton doesn't even have to be part of a, quote, college graduating class. Hell, he could do it in 1 year if he could accrue the number of points, which I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty and give you all of them, but they are a combination of, look, if you win the Nicklaus Award, the Hogan Award, the Haskins Award, you're going to get points for that. You win all three, you're getting all those points. If you are in the top 5 in the official world amateur rankings, you're getting points for those. If you get to number 1, that's 5, 4 for 2, 3 for 3, 2 for 2, 1 for 5, going in that particular order. So you're getting points there. And then the NCAAs and winning college tournaments, cuts, top 10s, and my gosh, if you actually won on the PGA Tour would matter, like Nick Dunlap, you're greenlit, you've got a job. But here's the thing about where college golf finds itself, and I mentioned this yesterday, it is more relevant because these players are more ready, but they're also more relevant because they're seen more, because there are more college tournaments. It used to be just the NCAA tournament, then it was the East Lake Cup, and now we're seeing not a plethora, but we're seeing strategically Golf Channel put college events on television. So there is not like college football. I'm not going to be analogous to that particular enterprise, but you may have a familiarity. And I think the PGA Tour should lean in a little bit more. And I'm not saying more cards. What I'm saying is the NFL, and again, I'm not comparing, this is like comparing apples to kumquats. It's not the same thing. But the NFL is genius in that they are always having you have them on your mind. Season ends, you're going, oh gosh, I don't have to think about anything for months. Really? No, you don't. You got kids running in shorts, accruing 40 times in shuttle drills at the combine. And it's not as important as it used to be, but it still is something on the calendar. And then obviously you have the draft and you have free agency. And the draft is one of the most remarkable things ever created. It's a man or a woman on a stage reading a name off a card, and tens of thousands of people are there watching it and cheering. Seriously, a name on a card is read, and Pittsburgh this year is going to go plumb crazy. The NFL is a different animal, and then you have OTAs and you have training camp. They're always giving you a little morsel. So here is what I would suggest to the PGA Tour as it relates to PGA Tour U. You're on the right track. Why not, at the end of the academic year / NCAA championships, for the top 3 or 5, I would say 3, who are in that PGA Tour U standings, knowing that number 1 is getting that golden ticket, fully exempt status on the PGA Tour right from the NCAAs, in conjunction with your sponsorship on the PGA Tour, greenlight that 3-ball into the next 2 PGA Tour events. It may produce nothing. All 3 of them may miss the cut, and it won't matter. But if they're all going to be on the doorstep, because I'm not talking about PGA Tour U accelerated where you need a certain threshold. We know that whoever is at the top of that graduating class is getting greenlit. Get the top 3 into the next 2 fields before the U.S. Open and culminate that. So then you have an additional storyline on your calendar that you're pulling directly from the college landscape. You know, college basketball and the NBA, they don't find themselves in a wonky place by accident. 7 of the last 10 top picks in the NBA draft, top 5 in 2024, top 5 in 2023, 7 of those 10 never played one solitary minute of college basketball. And you know what that means for the NBA? They got no relevancy or no awareness when they get to the NBA unless you're truly a total dyed-in-the-wool NBA hoops head and you're watching EuroLeague or guys playing somewhere in other parts of the world, because that's where they're coming from now. You know, you'd have to go back 3-4 years and of course go back 20 years. We knew these guys. They were there 2, 3, sometimes even 4 years. So it's like they got these built-in mini brands when they get to the NBA, and boom, there you go. There's Grant Hill. Hell, I know him. He's great. College golf is not that, and it's certainly not football, but it can be something, because people who watch this channel, who watch shows like this, who watch Fried Egg and No Laying Up and post games from those guys on a Sunday night, they want it all. So give them more. And why not give them something that, as we're seeing, these guys can play? Because I mentioned the name Ludwig Åberg. You think he proved that PGA Tour card that he got based on his performance in college was with merit? And I can name others as well who've gone by way of the Korn Ferry Tour through PGA Tour U, like Austin Eckroat and Davis Thompson. And this has only been around a couple of years. They've got something. dig in, lean in more, and make it more of a thread as they ascend from college to professional golf. We're going to take a break. Speaking of professional golf, he knows more than anybody I know, and that's why people who cover this sport ask him questions on social media. Hey man, I was just wondering, has anybody finished 8th in 3 straight weeks on the Korn Ferry Tour? And within about 90 seconds, Justin Ray will give you his answer. And it will be the right answer. He's going to join me next right here on a Wednesday edition of 5 Clubs right here on Golf Channel. And you can listen to us as well on the PGA Tour Radio Network on Sirius XM. We're back right after this. Welcome back in on this Wednesday. 5 Clubs here on Golf Channel on the PGA Tour Radio Network on Sirius XM. This segment being brought to you by Peter Millar. Whatever you're doing this week, whatever you need to kind of fit in, boardroom, soccer game, playing golf, they have the most complete, thorough, best apparel lines that you could possibly imagine. Go to petermillar.com to begin your shopping. It's all I wear and all I've worn for the last 15 years proudly as an ambassador for that great brand. By the way, I mentioned Wednesday. I wanted to reiterate that. My wife texted me during the break saying, you said Monday at the start of the show. Oh no, another perfect game broken up at the beginning. I don't even know that I said that. When I throw a perfect game on this show, that will be a day to celebrate. We're hoping on Justin Ray here. I'm sure he's going to join us. The idea that he would be tardy or late for anything is shocking to me. But while I have a minute, let me mention some things as we transition to the Florida swing. And as much as I love the West Coast, I think in terms of if you want to talk about golf courses, and obviously because of the horrific fires in Southern California, there was no Riviera this year, but architecturally, I'm particularly fond of both Northern California and Southern California. I lived in Central Florida for 10 years. I've always felt like Florida golf was, I don't even know if it was overrated. It just was not that compelling. But I've always felt that the Florida swing was. And as we get ready to begin what is now really a true robust Florida swing, it was kind of fragmented years ago, and now the way that things are lined up with the players moving back to March and with fortifying the back end of the swing with Valspar at Innisbrook, which is a wonderful golf course, which if you are in the Palm Harbor, Florida area, you go, is this Florida or is this kind of like Pinehurst? Because it's sandy, it's got some little bit of elevation change, not that Pinehurst necessarily has, but it's very, very good. But there are a couple of things as we get ready to embark on this that you look at and you can say, well, that's kind of a finite window to look at. It's really not. Because when you look at 8 weeks and you look at the totality of what a PGA Tour season is before the FedEx Cup playoffs, knowing kind of how frequently it feels like, it's not that infrequent, but it kind of feels that way about the best players playing. What are we looking at? Well, let's consider this. Starting at the beginning of the year with who won the first event and to where we sit present day, from Japan to Belgium to Northern Ireland to Austria to Canada. I feel like Jeff Daniels in that great opening scene in Newsroom, season 1, when he was talking about things that we're not very good at. Well, we're very good, and I'm speaking of the United States at golf, but you have to get to number 7 on the FedEx Cup standings, and I know a lot of people go, please don't use that list. Hey, look, it's an okay benchmark at this point to give an indication of who've gotten off to a decent start and who's lagging behind. And the truth is, 1 through 6, all nations outside the United States, and of course, there are players who have won, which speaks to another real point. And that is that as much as Live Golf has tried to promote the idea that they really are going to be the global tour, and they are in the sense that they really do globetrot much more than the PGA Tour does, as far as where the winners come from, the best players in the world migrate to the PGA Tour at much larger numbers. One, the workforce is still significantly larger. And if you look at really the total scope of all the players who are in these fields, yes, the United States is the deepest nation, undeniably, and that has been proven. You can look at world rankings and discredit them any way you want. Go to Data Golf, go to other places to find the information you need to understand who is the best nation by nation. But 1 through 6, right now, nobody from the United States, and there are 2 players through 8 events from the United States that have won a golf tournament. Brian Campbell this past week in Mexico and Harris English at the Farmers Insurance Open. And then if you look at kind of the other end of the spectrum, and I understand that it is still February, but the next winner will be crowned in the month of March, which will be on Sunday, March 2nd. And that is, there are a lot of players, not only from the United States, but also from nations that not only are you familiar with the nations, you're familiar with them. And I'm speaking of players like Viktor Hovland, who has gotten off to a very scratchy start. And there are others as well, and I'm taking a look at this list, and these are players outside the top 70. 70 is now the number. Adam Scott, Jordan Spieth, Sahith Theegala, Matthew Fitzpatrick, Ricky Fowler, Viktor Hovland, Max Homa. These are players that we are accustomed to seeing not just in the mix on a pretty regular basis on the PGA Tour, but embedded deep inside that. And as Rory McIlroy pointed out a couple of years ago, when he made the choice to start his year a little bit earlier on the PGA Tour, because he said, I looked up at the FedEx Cup standings, and I'm buried before we even get to the month of March. Now, that is not as much of a disadvantage as it used to be, which was the wraparound schedule. That doesn't exist anymore. So players kind of starting the meter in October, and you're going, why is this guy third? I didn't even know that he played any golf. I've been watching football for 3 months. That's not as much of the case anymore. But here's the other thing. Every player knows that starting this week, all roads, with all due respect to the players, which is a massive event, massive, all roads point to Augusta National and Magnolia Lane. And you want to build Old Mo. Because in the absence of momentum, the idea of going down Magnolia Lane and feeling like you got something that week, pretty remote at best. All right, we take a break here. We continue on this Wednesday edition. Dogs, picks, also Thomas Detry. We're back with you right after this. Back in on this Wednesday, it is 5 Clubs on Golf Channel and also on the PGA Tour Radio Network on SiriusXM. This segment being brought to you by Golf Pride. The Align Max grip is available now. Harris English won with them a couple of weeks ago. I saw Robert Rock doing an instructional video yesterday with them talking about face angle, and I'm just telling you, it's the best grips that I've had on my golf clubs, and Golf Pride trusted by more players at every level than every grip anywhere in the world. All right, joining me now, he won a couple of weeks ago at the WM Phoenix Open. Appreciate his time on this Wednesday morning. I'm speaking, of course, of Thomas Detry. Thomas, good morning. How you feeling?
Morning, Gary. Feeling great. Kind of taking some time off right now. Got 2 weeks off. It was much needed. I've had a busy start of the year, so it's nice to being able to breathe a little bit and relax.
Well, you said something you said the word breathe, and I want to examine that a little bit more in a minute, but I appreciated so much an interview you did a couple days after you won, talking about challenges, the psychological and mental challenges of doubt and fear and belief. Examining that, was that easy to start doing that as you have done?
Yeah, I'm trying to. I'm trying to analyze everything I do and the reasons why I haven't won, and why sometimes you see some players, like I'm going to give an example, Ludwig Eberg. He's a good friend. I mean, he's incredible. I have a lot of respect for a guy like that. But it seems like everything comes a little bit easier to him. He probably doesn't question himself as much as I do, or he might. But, it's impressive to see a guy who's just turned pro and barely just over a year ago and does so well. And, it took me almost 8 years to 9 years almost to win on the PGA Tour, or to win on a main tour, any main tour. So it was a lot of work, a lot of questioning myself, and a lot of just trying to improve things, and trusting the process.
I referenced right after you won a movie that you're way too young to even know. It's Days of Thunder. Tom Cruise was a race car driver. And he had and again, this is not you, but it was the idea that, he had an accident and he was having trouble digging in and trusting and believing himself. And then he broke through this vortex And he did. And it was like he got out of his own way. Is that kind of a simple way of saying it, that you learned to get out of your own way?
Yeah, it was kind of almost a moment where I almost got fed up with the whole situation. I opened up a couple of weeks ago in another podcast, and it's true. It got to the point where I remember sometimes being in contention on Friday and almost being reluctant, almost not wishing to make birdies, just because I knew what was coming up, and I knew, oh, here we go. I'm going to put myself in this position again, and I'm
Okay, we have lost Thomas Detry just for the moment. We will try to reconnect with him. These types of things, I've told our production team, it's bound to happen. We're going to get knocked off the air. Now, the only other time this did happen, it was only temporary, was when Gil Hanse was on a bulldozer and somebody who runs one of the companies that sponsors this show called him right in the middle of it. I don't think that the guy who runs Peter Millar called Thomas, but nonetheless, we're going to reconnect with him. I think we're going to take a little break. We'll come back, try to reconnect with Thomas, which I think we have been able to do here. Sorry for the interruption, technical issues. We're back with Thomas Detry right after this. All right, back in on Five Clubs, bottom of the hour. This segment brought to you by Pinehurst. I was there last weekend. They embody the motto that success is always under construction. They're adding more and more and more. Pinehurst number 10's clubhouse, its restaurant. The cottage is at number 8. A new restaurant in the main clubhouse as well, right there at the resort. There's nothing like a trip to Pinehurst. All right, rejoining us now, kind enough with his patience through our technical issues, Thomas Detry, who won a couple of weeks ago at the WM Phoenix Open. Thomas, let's continue with that part about, being present. You do some meditation. Is that something, whether it's competitive days, do you start your day by trying to get your mind quiet every day?
It's something that I wish I could do. I haven't got the discipline yet to do that. But I have felt some massive benefits from doing it, especially moments where I do feel nervous. I've had a few moments on a Saturday morning, or I used to do it in the evenings, and now I've started doing it in the mornings, because in the evenings I used to almost fall asleep during the meditation, so it wasn't a good idea. But in the mornings, when I feel my mind rushing a little bit and I'm in a position to gain something big, or in a contention or something like that, I've really started to do a bit of meditation, and it's really helped me. And I think people think that meditation is 1 hour sitting like this on a sofa, and it's not. There's all sorts of apps now that you can use, and only 10 minutes of kind of training your mind to be a bit more kind of quiet. I tend to be a forward thinker, so I tend to have all these kind of thought that linger in my mind, and being able to just for 10 minutes just quiet it down and think of, almost empty your brain of all these thoughts. I thought that was really something that I've learned to do. I still need to progress and get better at it, but it's something very helpful that I think not only golfers need to do, but I think anyone, whether it's a businessman, whether it's obviously athletes, whether it's anyone in your life, I think it can be very, very beneficial.
I agree. Another word you used earlier was breathing. I don't do this much, but sometimes I'll ask people I know well who are in, stressful situations, are you breathing? And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm talking about conscious breathing, and the value of that. Do you try to do that when you were in the arena in terms of managing energy and consciously breathing?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's all kind of linked to meditation again. This is who I am, and this is the nature that I've always been. So like when I unconsciously obviously get under pressure in contention, I start forward thinking a little bit. You kind of picture yourself being the winner of a tournament, and
Yes.
unconsciously your breathing kind of speeds up, your heart rate speeds up, and all that kind of happens unconsciously. So one of the keys to all recognize it. So just by recognizing it, you're already kind of ahead of the game. So you recognize it, and then kind of use those techniques that you learn during meditation to breathe deeply, breathe through the stomach, and that's the next step. And that's another little win, So there's the number one is to recognize those moments where your kind of mind is like rushing, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, we don't want to be in that place. take a step back, start breathing, and bring your mind back to the good spot, because I think that's where at least I have struggled with. And you kind of unconsciously get into these kind of mindsets, and then your whole body starts rushing, your blood flow starts rushing, your heart rates, and that's when the pressure kind of piles up, and I think that's when you kind of lose your ability to perform at the best.
You mentioned Ludwig earlier, and this is another thing that I appreciate all the things that you're trying to manage. And one of those things is you're in a sport, like all sports, where you're comparing yourselves, whether you're doing it deliberately or not. You have Ryder Cup standings, FedEx Cup standings, where you are on a leaderboard, who you're playing with, and you're looking at them while you're playing with them. And I use the term, people know this, comparison is the thief of joy. Do you try to not think about looking at other people, whether it's on lists or whether it's on leaderboards or whether it's who you're playing with, and just focus on yourself?
100%. I'm going to take you back to a couple of months ago. I was in Sun City in South Africa I played 9 holes with Gary Player, and we didn't have I have huge respect for Gary. He's incredible. I mean, he's one of the biggest names in the game. He won I don't know how many times, one of the biggest athletes in South Africa. But we kind of had a conversation about, he was just wondering why I hadn't won. He was kind of almost telling me off why I hadn't won, and I was kind of telling him, I was like, I think that there's a bit of genetics in that sense, that to some players it comes easier, and to other players they just have to work harder. I'll give you another example is Paul McGinley, who I have huge respect. He's been really helpful to me, and we've shared a couple of rounds of golf together. We've had dinners together, and he told me same thing. For Paul, it took him 15 years, I think, to reach the Ryder Cup. It didn't come so easy, so quick, and experience, and I feel like I recognize myself a little bit more on that side rather than the Ludwig Aberg side, where Ludwig is obviously one of the best players in the world, and I have massive respect for him, and he's incredible. But he seems like, to someone like him, he's obviously very hardworking, but maybe those winning moments come a little bit easier to some people than others. And to someone like me, it took me a little bit more time and a little bit more hard work, especially on the mind side of things, to get that first W.
You realize what a badge of honor it is for you to get told off by Gary Player? You're now a made man. At least it wasn't about your diet or what kind of food you're eating.
Yeah. Well, I obviously ask you all these questions. Do you work out, Thomas? Do you do this? You do that? I'm like, yes, I do work out. I do all these things. I do all that stuff. But yeah, it was pretty fun. I mean, we were not on the same page. He was saying that why. That you need to love it in your heart, you need to be a winner. I was like, yes, I know that. I do really want to win a golf tournament, and this is like what my dreams are made of. But I do think that not to blame it on me, or not to say that I'm just unlucky, but it's just it took me a little bit more hard work to get there than some other people, and I think it's part of genetics. I really do. I think that some guys are natural winner, and some guys are naturally not really thinking of any consequence and just go straight to the target, and it took me a little bit more of a kind of couple of turns,
No doubt. And look, the way you got there was so emphatic. The combination of the totality of your performance, especially down the stretch. I hate to ask this question in the form of how did it feel, but in terms of when you're in a flow state, which you were obviously in, when you're executing shots in the manner in which you are, you're making putts, you're obviously seeing lines, everything's dripping in with perfect speed. Is that the culmination of this journey? And it's not the end. In many ways, it's just the beginning. But take me through that final stretch of holes when you are literally in a state you haven't been in before.
Yeah. So I'll start with one of the moments that I remember compartmentalizing the round, kind of thinking, okay, there's the first front nine. We all know, well, players know that the front nine at TPC Scottsdale is a bit tougher, so trying to shoot on the par on the front nine with that lead that I had was big. And then there was the tee shot on hole number 11, which was key as well. It's a tough tee shot. And then the next tee shot was 15. And I remember really being kind of in cruising mode, not really thinking of any consequence. I was kind of in the zone. hit the fairway on 11, birdied 11, which was big, hit it to the middle of the green on 12, hit the fairway on the par 5 13, which was crucial as well, hit the green in 2 on 13. So I really, at that time, I was kind of in the zone and in the flow and not really thinking of any consequence. And then kind of, little silly mistakes, a 3-putt 13, and suddenly, there, I kind of felt my mind thinking, being more forward thinking, kind of thinking, oh, here we go. Actually, the lead is kind of shrinking a little bit. I just 3-putted. Things are not going my way as easily as I thought they were going to be. So that's kind of where I use those tricks that I use during meditation. And I was just like, okay, back to breathing, no rush. Stay in the moment, stay in the present, stick to your routine. And I did a great up and down on 14, and I showed up to that tee box on 15 in actually really good mindset, knowing what I had to do, and I just smoked the drive. And I felt like at that time, that was kind of a winning moment for me, where I was like, okay, there was a little bit of a stressful moment there. Daniel Berger was coming back. He just chipped in on 14, and I was able to use those tricks that I've used during meditation and bring it back to the moment and stay in the present and commit to my target, which is really all I needed to do.
You certainly did. This may seem kind of odd, but I asked you this last year. We did a radio interview, and you're a very stylish player, the Boss gear, G4 kicks, G4 glove. And I asked you, why do you affix your glove on the back of your belt? And you said, I wasn't even aware of that. I'll stop doing it. I said, don't stop doing it. You're playing great. You just finished 4th at the PGA. Do you remember even when you started doing that? Because everybody stuffs their glove in their back pocket. You take the Velcro strip and strip it around your belt.
The belt, I do. Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I don't know. It's just kind of a habit that I learned. It'd be interesting to go back into the footage of all my pro career and when did I start actually doing that? Because I think it started maybe a year or two within my pro career. I don't think I used to do it all the time. I used to put my I used to put it on my golf. I used to strap it around the shaft of a driver or something like that, and then I've kind of I started putting on my belt. I really don't know. It's a great question. I don't know why I do it.
Don't stop.
Maybe it's to showcase the beautiful colors of all the gloves that I have.
Absolutely. G4 it's a great kaleidoscope. The other thing that I want to share with people, if they've not seen this, and you mentioned genetics earlier, we're going to show the photo that is still on your Wikipedia page of when you were literally a junior golfer. And this is one of the most extraordinary heads of lettuce that I have ever seen. Thomas, how old were you when that photo was taken?
It's not AI modified. There's no AI in there. There's no AI, I promise.
How old were you then?
You know what? I think that picture was taken at the KLM Open in 2008. I was 15 years old, I think. And believe it or not, that's the look that I had when I I just won the Dutch Open, the Dutch Junior Open, which gave me an invite, a wild card for the KLM Open in 2008. And I actually vividly remember a journalist taking a picture of me during one of the practice days. So that's what I looked like 2 days before my first European Tour event.
Thomas,
kudos for the internet world for not changing that picture and leaving it out there. So it's
still there. It's still there, which is great. And if you make the European Ryder Cup team, a lot of guys that week, especially on the European side, don't wear hats. You don't have an obligation to a sponsor. You need to grow your hair in the month of August and into September. You make that team and let the lettuce flow. Look at that flow. That's world class right there.
No, it's kind of natural flow. It grows. I take the hat off and it just comes back. It's pretty lucky.
All right, but Thomas,
that one there was pretty special.
Yeah, that one's incredible. All right, let me get you out of here. 5 to go with Thomas Detry. 5 quick questions for him. Let's take him back to the University of Illinois days. Do you remember having a place, your go-to place on Green Street in Champaign, Illinois, for a burger, for a sandwich? Did you guys the golf team have a regular haunt that you went to on Green Street?
Well, I've always been a big Chipotle fan, so Green Street Chipotle was a good stop for me, and it was kind of I sometimes ate Chipotle 3 times a day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, So I think it opened at like 10 a.m. or 10:30 a.m. So I remember showing up there on a Saturday morning at 10:30 just before it opened, having my Chipotle. And I was a pretty big Chipotle guy. I still am, to be honest. I enjoy it.
Well, so many of you guys are. All right, who was the best college player you saw who was not on the University of Illinois roster? Who's the best college player you saw at that time?
That's a good question. Let me go back to. There's a couple of. There's a few, but I will have to say I think Patrick Rogers. Played for Stanford. I remember he had one of the. He had a stunning career. I mean, at college. I remember him winning everything he won. I think he won our Fighting Illini event, which was hosted at Olympia Fields. I think he won, and I remember he was just untouchable. So I do have memories of Patrick just dominating the college landscape, really.
He did. He and Maverick McNeely and Tiger in terms of wins while at Stanford. Now, Tiger was it felt like he was there for 10 minutes, but nonetheless. All right, the U.S. city that might remind you in any way of Belgium or Brussels. Is there any place in the United States that reminds you of home?
Yes, there is. Actually, we really enjoy, my wife and the kids, we really enjoy the West Coast. There's a bit more of a European style of living, especially San Diego, Del Mar. It's kind of a little town. We always stay when we play at a Torrey Pines event. We always kind of rent a house in Del Mar, and we love it. You can walk everywhere. There's a beach. It reminds me of. It kind of reminds us of. We have my in-laws have a little house in the southwest of England. It's called Cornwall. It's a little county at the tip end of England, and it does feel a little similar. You know, some. The ocean, the waves, you can walk everywhere, little shops. So we really enjoy Del Mar. It's one of our favorite stops of the year.
All right, very good. You mentioned the kids. Is there a show that Sophia and Alba watch that you actually enjoy? I mean, they're toddlers, they're little people, but I know you have to watch a lot of this stuff. Is there one you actually like?
Yes, actually do. Robin Hood. Now that you mention that, I really enjoy Disney movies, and we just got our 2.5-year-old into the Robin Hood, and she absolutely loves it. I mean, she's watched Robin Hood about 1,000 times already, and we listen to the music during breakfast. We do everything about Robin Hood, so it's a show that I actually really enjoy watching with her.
Very good. All right, last thing, your favorite smell and your least favorite smell.
The least favorite smell, I'm gonna have to say the smell of my daughter in the morning when she's just taking a dump. I probably shouldn't say that live on TV.
You already have.
No, I probably should. I actually cannot believe I just said that. But yeah, I think every single parent will recognize itself in that moment. Sorry about that, folks.
There's nothing to apologize for. We all, as a parent, we've all been there too many times, Thomas. All right, let's save it here with the mulligan. What's your favorite smell?
My favorite smell? I think my favorite smell is the smell of, in the summer, whether it's Belgium or England, when it just rained a little bit and the mowers have just gone and mowed the fairways. It's just this smell of just freshly cut grass, a little wet. That's quality. I love that.
That's great. Hey, listen, thank you for taking the time today. Congratulations again on the win. Look forward to seeing you very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thomas Detry, winner of the WM Phoenix Open, and he gives us one of the great drops, no pun intended, that we have had here on 5 Clubs. We come back, our picks for the week next, right after this. Back in on 5 Clubs every Wednesday, we make our picks for the PGA Tour event each week, and we also will update the standings as well. And this segment is being brought to you by Century Insurance, right by you. And I thought that we would get out of the West Coast with a win. That did not happen. But before we get to the picks, the standings this week, and maybe it's because we're angling for a new sponsorship here, because donuts. And by the way, how many very disciplined staff here. A lot of donuts still left here. Here are the standings, and if you look at the right-hand column, donuts. Not one win, not one picked winner on the PGA Tour, with Emma Carpenter, myself, Jay Billis, Gil Hans, Johnson Wagner, Brendan Young, Taylor Zarzer. Now, Johnson, very close. He had Aldrich Peitgeter in in the Mexico Open, and I can promise you, the rest of us were rooting like hell for Brian Campbell. And we made that abundantly clear on our text chain this week. So Johnson gets out of the basement. Taylor, while traveling in Japan this week, he falls to the low rung. So with that being said, the money, modest, and that's just gives you context to a modest degree. So why don't we take a look at our picks this week? And something, again, is very much in play. I have taken Russell Henley, as is Taylor Zarzer and Jay Billis. You never want to be aligned with Jay in anything in life. That is called, though, the idiot trifecta. That never works out. Russell Henley, he's made 9 of 10 cuts at the Cognizant. He's got a great record. He won there. He's got 3 top 10s, including that win. This year, he's got a couple of top 10s. He's got a 5th and a 10th. And I would say that Shane Lowry, understandably, you consider how close he has been in that event over the years. He's got a 2nd, he's got a 4th, he's got a 5th. Seemed like he was going to win about 3 years ago. And he's in good form as well, and he's back home in terms of his U.S. home base where most of these players are based, which is in the greater Jupiter, Florida area. So those are our picks for the Cognizant Classic this week as we begin the Florida swing. All right, when we come back, we'll wrap up the week, give you a little teaser of what's coming next week, and of course, we end the week as we do each Wednesday. The greatest creatures on earth, Dogs of the Week, coming up next right here on 5 Clubs. Welcome back in as we put a bow on our week here on 5 Clubs on Golf Channel, also on the PGA Tour Radio Network. And you can send them in if you have a dog that has a relationship with your club or the game of golf, because a lot of them do. Please send them to us, dogs@5clubsgolf.com. We have gotten so many of them since we began this program at the beginning of January. And so we're going to get through all of them. We're going to celebrate them all. So let's take a look at our celebrated Dogs of the Week. We start with Nero. The owner is Jared Villarengo, the Director of Grounds and Club Operations at Applebrook Golf Club in Malvern, Pennsylvania. That is the home of Gil Hanse. Nero is there every day, goes to work with Jared, who runs the golf course. Now, look at this cruise submitted by Beth Majera at the Preserve at Videra in Greenville, South Carolina. It's Kane, Casey, Bailey, Deacon are all Goldens. Frank is the Boykin. Big Daddy Kane is the king, a 100-pound just bundle of love. What a crew. There is Lily, submitted by Josh Upson, the general manager and director of golf at the Country Club of Vermont in Waterbury, Vermont. Lily is a 4-year-old Irish setter, a rescue from Illinois, works hard behind the counter in the pro shop. And then finally, from Steve Gilly, who's a golf course superintendent, this is Lucy, part of the crew at the Canyon Creek Country Club in Richardson, Texas, loves chasing squirrels and riding in the golf cart. Who doesn't? Who doesn't? Those are your Dogs of the Week. And again, send them to us, dogs@5clubsgolf.com. And I will say this for the reaction that I've gotten from my phone blowing up regarding what Thomas Detry said about his least favorite smell. Anybody who knows me knows how much I love live television. I've missed it. I've missed it most primarily because of the exercise of doing this. But the reason why that happened is not because we had technical issues, but we did. And who knows if we were going to get Thomas Detry back. And we did, and he gave us that. Thank you, Thomas, for the moment of the week, which is a glorious thing. Next week, Jimmy Dunn's going to join us, the president of Seminole Golf Club. Monday is the pro member at Seminole Golf Club. When I worked there on the professional staff, that event was not going on. It had been discontinued for a little while. His thoughts on the history of the event, and obviously all the great players are going to be there on Monday as well. Andy Weitz is going to join us. The chief marketing officer of the PGA Tour is going to be with us. We will have Wagyu Filet in on Tuesday. Emma Carpenter to talk some college golf as well. And my old colleague on Morning Drive, Damon Hack, with us as well. Enjoy the Cognizant Classic and all the golf for all of us here at 5 Clubs. Have a great rest of your week. We will see you Monday.